what changes can we expect? I mean, Mr. Doval is coming in as the NSA and a decisive mandate has been given. Do we expect decisions that to be that decisive also? I mean,
well, it's a new setup. The significant feature is that the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, has no experience of working in Delhi. He is the first time MP and first time Prime Minister.
Right.
So he's a lucky man. But the only appointment which is of significance, which I have noted after this new government came up, is the appointment of Mr. Doval, Ajit Doval, as the National Security Advisor. Now, this is a very controversial appointment because it will fly in the face of the Foreign Service of India. Because if you want to appoint a person from the Foreign Service to advise the government in a similar capacity, then it's a question of whether he will work with the present National Security Advisor as a colleague or as his superior or as his subordinate. That's a complex question.
The Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi do not share the best of friendships, and given the fact that you have an NSA who's not from the Foreign Service, which was traditionally, I mean, how does the external security angle come in?
I think the IB does have some responsibility, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but I think the IB does have some responsibility for India's own near abroad, Nepal and Myanmar and Bangladesh. I think there is some kind of monitoring that they do. So in that sense, the IB is not entirely divorced from some of the security issues that we have with some of our neighbors. As far as external is concerned, there is some talk, I understand, of Mr. Jaishankar, who's currently ambassador in Washington, coming in as some kind of a foreign policy advisor to Narendra Modi. But I think Modi also has his own think tank going, and some of those decisions you saw at the swearing in itself, you had the representative from Taiwan who was there at the swearing in, you had the Tibetan exile Prime Minister Lobsang Sengye who was there. So these are all indicators that Modi is perhaps receiving inputs from multiple sources. He's not going to be only looking at a bureaucratic kind of input coming in.
I want to get in Rajeshwari. Rajeshwari, we've talked about the broad setup of the security apparatus, but what about the challenges that you see the new government facing as far as both internal security and external security are concerned?
Personally, I think the primary challenges that they will face will be in bringing together the IB and RAW under one platform, which he's planning to do, which is highly necessary. It's been a long time since there's no proper, how can I put this, interaction between the two, if I may put it that way. It's a very raw way to say it. Okay, raw way to say it, but it's high time there is more communication between the two agencies, and this is where I think they will face a problem, but I don't think they'll face too many hiccups given it's Doval who is going to be leading charge. As you know, RAW and IB, both of them are going to report to him, unlike the IB, which otherwise reports to the Home Ministry. In this scenario, I would also like to bring in the appointment of General V.K. Singh to donor. I mean, you bring that in, his appointment as Minister of State for External Affairs and for donor, and you bring Ajit Doval in. I don't think they're going to face too many problems, especially given the credentials all of them have.
Another major problem, Surya, would be the counter-terrorism infrastructure. Terror is something that the BJP had really taken on the UPA government on. We had 26/11, we had repeated terror attacks. Do we see, how do we see the government handling that?
I think since 26/11, there has been a certain beefing up of the internal security apparatus, at least in terms of surveillance, monitoring, that kind of stuff. You have these NSG hubs that have come up in various parts of the country. But somehow, when you look at that cop in the street, with his lathi out there, the general sense you get is you don't have any confidence in this fellow. You go to a police station, it's the same thing, There's a lack of credibility in the kind of police systems that we have, So ultimately, internal security is all about governance and corruption and how people like that policeman out they behave. And I don't see any effort by your average politician to look at that, There are scores of reports out there. Which are detailing
in
methods
this book,
in which
Mr. Subramaniam's book, in fact, is a seminal work on police reform.
Well, I have given it to the Home Ministry.
That's where the problem is.
They have not got back to me.
Very personally, I am not sure how the government is going to act on saffron terror or all that. But as NSA, I think Doval will be rather how can I put this, more specific on what he's targeting, in the sense he's been a go-getter. He gets stuff done. That's his identity. So I think, first of all, he's going to push for this NCPC to be created, and then his appointment has already caused Dawood Ibrahim to move to the Afghan border. I mean, you can see the kind of effect he's already had. And then what I think they must act on, though, is the Bharatiya Janata Party actually had this one sentence in their manifesto where they speak about a national maritime authority. They should actually act on it and, establish something, actually act on that promise of the National Maritime Authority. Apart from that, I think the whole idea of a unified command will be very useful to bring all the information on one platform, as was said earlier. And I don't think it would be religious in nature, at least not from the NSA's part, and that's what I believe. Appointment has come on. I mean, it's if you have noted, the US just released 5 Afghan Taliban leaders, commanders from Guantanamo Bay, and Afghan Taliban. One of them, I think, was the guy Mr. Doval negotiated with during the Kandahar crisis. So I personally think there will be more action taken towards specific issues and routes, and more action towards deterrence than towards that would be a reactionary measure. I personally don't think it's going to be anything which is going to be saffron terror or anything.
How Mr. Modi is able to analyze situation and what sort of information he gets, what sort of information he likes, what sort of things that Mr. Ajit Doval, who is the preferred person by this thing, what is he going to do? How is he going to respond? As far as I know, Doval is a man part of the problem. He is a part of the problem in the sense, solution requires out-of-the-box thinking. That is what Mr. Modi is asking for. Whether Mr. Doval can do out-of-the-box thinking, being very much a part of the establishment thinking.
Yeah, he's been the shadow NSA for 10 years.
Well,
Deputy Prime Minister.
No, in the Vivekananda Foundation, where he was director for so long, he's been interacting with a number of foreigners and foreign scholars and visitors and so on. But to what extent that is acceptable to foreign office people? How do they react to all these discussions that are going on in the Vivekananda Foundation? All that raises a number of very critical issues for which I would wait for the next opportunity for discussion.
The real test for this government is what happens if there is a repeat of 2611. How does it react? How does it respond? What does Modi do or not do? I think that's really the test that's going to
somebody might
tell us what Modi is all about.
Yeah.
So there has been a lot of talk. Rajeshwari, you wanted one final word before we wrap this up, right?
Sure. I think what I think is what the government would need to do would be to reinvigorate the National Security Council Secretariat. It was supposed to be the government's in-house think tank on security issues, but it's like largely dependent on the NSA now. I mean, if they were given more space to do their research, and like as a think tank, it's their job to explore more out-of-the-box options, as was said earlier. That would be quite helpful. That's what I believe.
All right, so let's wait and watch whether, as the cliche goes, wait and watch for the out-of-the-box thinking, whether that comes through or whether it's more conventional policing that happens across the country.
That's more likely to my mind.
All right, on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, Rajeshwari and Gautam, for coming here on Google Hangout. And thank you very much, Surya and Mr. Subramaniam, for coming.
Thank you very
It was
much.
a pleasure
Thank
having you on the
Thank
show.
you.
Well, that was a little presentation on the security apparatus of India, how that is going to change. We'll wait and watch to how that changes, and we'll be discussing that in the future for sure. Thanks so much for watching.